Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Espresso with Carlo. We are very, very excited to have one of the leading candidates for mayor on with us today, Maya Wiley, and I will introduce Maya in just a moment. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. I have to say, I'm in my office in Midtown, and I was telling a friend of mine this morning on the phone how it felt good because it felt like there was an energy and people walking and the stores were starting to get busy. There was a line where I went and got my bagel this morning. By the way, that stupid New York Times story about bagels, and come on, I mean, I won't even get into it, but it just felt good, and I felt like a year later we are hopefully, God willing, on the right road. So, and we'll excited to hear about Maya's plans for the future of New York as well. Let me begin by thanking our sponsors for today: Bravo Global Infrastructure Solutions, Langen Engineering, Northwest Mutual, Siame, and STV. Thank you all for your support. A special thank you to the chair of the New York Building Congress Board, who's on with us today, Elizabeth Velez of Velez Organization, and also the chair of the New York Building Foundation, our nonprofit arm, Cheryl McKissick Daniel of McKissick and McKissick. As a father of a 5-year-old little girl, I have to say, in honor of Women's History Month, it's exciting that for the first time ever, the two chairs of our organizations are women, and women who have built up, from the ground up, minority women business-owned organizations. So Liz and Cheryl, thank you for all that you do for us at the New York Building Congress. So I want to and I just got to give a shout out. I know Allison Hirsch, you're on watching. Hello, Allison. It's been a while. Keep up the good work that you're doing. Maya is really no stranger to the people in New York, and particularly people that are building the city and creating jobs and economic development. Maya is an attorney, a professor, civil rights activist. Over a really exciting career, she served as the board chair of the New York City Civilian Complaint Review Board, co-chair of School Diversity Task Force, counsel to New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. She was in the Civil Division of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. I mean, I can go on and on and on. Legal analyst for NBC News and MSNBC, vice president for social justice at the New School, and a founder and president of the Center for Social Inclusion, which is a national policy strategy organization that is dedicated to dismantling structural racism. Maya lives in Brooklyn. It's a fellow Brooklynite here, Maya. And I'm not going to talk a lot about your plan for New York because we want to hear it from you. But I know Maya has some exciting vision about how to get the city really up and going for everyone in the city, not just for some. So let me turn it over to our guest and mayoral candidate, Maya Wiley. Welcome again.
Well, thank you so much, Carlo. It's a pleasure to be here, and I just wish I could be there with you having espresso.
As do we, as do we.
But I also agree with your assessment of what we're starting to see in terms of the lifeblood coming back into Midtown. So it's good to hear that for today. And a big thank you and pleasure to be here also with Elizabeth Velez and Cheryl McKissick, as people who I was privileged to get to know a little bit when I was inside City Hall working on women and minority-owned business contracts, along with Lou Coletti. So it feels a little bit like a homecoming. So let me just say, I'm running to be the next mayor of New York City as someone who has committed my entire career to creating more opportunity for communities of color, for women of all races, and in ways that fundamentally recognize that, we need to lift all boats. And when we lift the boats of folks who've been sinking the fastest, we typically do that. And, this decision to run for mayor for me was very much not something that was on my bucket list as a career item, but as someone who's been a change maker outside of government as well as inside, who's seen both sides and has seen the tremendous power of government to be transformative in a way that helps all of us. I did feel called to this moment because I do believe that we are a city where we can all live with dignity. You know, no matter who we are, no matter what we look like or who we love, or whether we have a big bank account or no bank account at all. Like, this is part of what makes us such a rich city, right? Is the richness of our diversity and all that we have here. And that was endangered before COVID, as we know. And then COVID has decimated us and deepened and fast-tracked, you know, what I would call like the three pandemics of affordability. It's becoming far too expensive a city for far too many New Yorkers across class and across race. It was also a city that, as we know, we've had a racial justice pandemic as well, in terms of racial injustice. And we've been confronting that for a while, but there's also the spiritual malaise that we have. And that comes in many different forms, but COVID has really traumatized our city and our people. But here's the thing, I'm so excited because the power of government, the power of city government, even with our current situation, we have resources, we have talent, we have know-how, we have people who have done so much with so little for so long, as well as so many who will partner to make this city stronger. And a key plank and platform in my run for mayor is to create $100,000 jobs, new jobs, good jobs, and do that because as mayor, I have control of capital construction. That's not something I need agreement from Albany for or dollars from DC. It's something we can do right now. And I have publicly committed to spend $10 billion in capital construction, fast track creating a New York New Deal czar, because that's what I call it, a new deal for New York, to fast track, because we also have to find the right projects that also solve other problems and pull them forward, fast track them, get them done faster because that's stimulative, but also do something that represents all the other things our capital spending gives us the opportunity to do. Increase women and minority-owned business contracts, something I was really privileged to work on inside City Hall, and something we got started with no resources, no staffing, no program, got it up from 500 million to 1.6 billion in 1 year, with starting to build the infrastructure within city government to do more. But as we know, we haven't done nearly enough, and we must do significantly more. That's a part of it. It's also making sure that we're creating more job opportunities inside communities that have had the highest job losses. That's also partnership with the unions on things like pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs, local targeting hires. But the point is that this also helps us solve so many of our problems, because capital construction is affordable housing. It's resiliency in the face of flooding. It's thinking about transportation alternatives. It's putting $2 billion more into NYCHA for renovation and rehabilitation so that that housing is housing with dignity. And all those are just a starting point, but a major starting point that I can do day one as mayor, and look forward to partnering with you on that as well.
Well, that is clearly music to the ears of our members, and I'm getting a lot of text saying we love what we hear. And we're going to go back to that in a minute. I want to talk for a minute about a poll that came out by Pix 11 and Emerson College. Obviously, we said earlier you're coming up the ranks in that poll, and that's wonderful. But I want to talk about the non-candidate piece of the poll, which talked about how the next mayor really needs to be able to tackle multiple pressing issues. So, it's not just rebuilding, or it's not just housing, but it's, and this is in the order where they came in, and they're all bunched together, by the way, within a point or two. So COVID-19, jobs, homelessness, education, housing, healthcare. Wow. What do you do as the next mayor when you're going to be day one, January 1st, you've got all these issues to deal with? How do you prioritize? What do you do? What makes sense?
Well, first of all, let's just start with the fact that we have to be recovering from COVID itself, right? This is about vaccine distribution. This is about demonstrating both to our people and to the world that we are safe, we're big, we're bad, and we're back. And that's a critical part of it, both for our own sense of sanity, our own sense of economic opportunity inside the city, but also what we're attracting back to the city, right? Because we know we've lost 300,000 jobs in the hospitality and entertainment sector because of tourism, because we've lost that's billions of dollars to our economy. But it's also about our spiritual malaise, right? I was talking about how it's impacted us spiritually. What I really mean by that is we are traumatized and we are looking for a way to get back to each other and be able to be back together, whether it's in the office, in our communities, in restaurants, and all the things that make life worth living. And we're getting there and we're doing better. And if we're not there by January, we'll go that whatever that last mile is to make sure that's done. Vaccine penetration, making sure we're open, making sure folks know and have full information about what keeps us safe, making sure we have a clear plan to be prepared in the future. But all those things are critically important. But here's the thing, and I've spent my entire career, part of being someone who both knows what it's like to go to a segregated, overcrowded, underfunded public school, as I did when I was a young child, knowing that the folks in my neighborhood were working long hours, but when rents increased, they also got pushed out because they couldn't afford to pay the increased rent, that these are problems that have been with us for a while. So many, got 600,000 people who don't have health insurance in this city. And the reality is city government touches all these things right now, runs these systems right now, impacts them right now. We don't have to, they are all priorities and we don't have to choose because we have 55 agencies, because we have over 325,000 city employees. And the thing about being the only candidate who has managed from a senior perched inside City Hall is understanding how that gets managed, because you're never just doing one thing at a time, ever. In this city, you're doing all of them at once. So we have to recognize in terms of, we've talked about jobs some, and we've got some additional plans, including putting $5,000 universal care grants into the hands of the 100,000 poorest families in this city, just as a start. That's actually something that's very similar to what Joe Biden did in stimulus, right? That we just got from Congress. It's going to create childcare grants. That actually is one of the top 3 affordability problems we have in this city. And it's a critical problem for women at work and for all kinds of reasons in terms of being able to work. That's something we can do again right now because we've got the resources. We just have to utilize them effectively. Creating family care centers so folks can get full service, be able to take care of seniors and young people. That's part of what we'll do with capital construction budget, but it's also solving part of the problem of people being able to work or see a doctor, is having a safe place to put a young child or an older child or a parent or a family member with disabilities who you otherwise have to take care of. These are social problems we had before and we can solve. But things like healthcare, for example, and I'm going to put out a proposal. I haven't put it out yet, but we are going to put out a proposal about how we close the health insurance gap as a city, because the city has tremendous bargaining power, has tremendous opportunity in utilizing that and in partnering with folks to bring costs down. But we don't have to do these things one at a time. We, as mayor, I know how to put in place really smart, talented people who know and understand the mission and the job, and know that the job of mayor is to make sure that all those pieces and parts are all happening, are all accountable, are all transparent, and that my job is to make sure it's happening, that I'm moving barriers out of people's way. A big part of what I did as counsel to the mayor was commissioners would come to me with stuff that was in the way, and I'd help move it out of the way so they could get things done, like universal pre-K. And these are the things that really management from that big chair inside City Hall really represents. And that's also the power of government. And I'll add one other thing, but it has to partner. It has to listen and learn and partner with experts, community leaders, our for-profit sector, on just all the opportunities we have to do that better and more impactfully. I believe deeply in that, and that's the way I'll lead.
Great. Well, it all sounds exciting. I want to stay with what you're saying with partnering. A lot of people talk about the business community in New York, and that's a very large job, right? I mean, there's big business, small business, local mom and pops, the construction industry, Wall Street, et cetera. How do you see partnering with the business community at large to really help you achieve the goals that you just listed?
Yeah, well, first, and it's something I've been doing even as on this journey to City Hall, to earning support for City Hall, is talking to everyone. I did it when we were working on women and minority-owned business contracts, which is by talking to MWBEs about wasn't working, which that was our private sector. We have to remember that's who MWBEs are. Also talking, I mean, this was conversations with Lou Coletti about what was happening on that side of the ledger and what we could do with all sides of our opportunities to partner better and to see the opportunities for that partnership better. But one of the things that we can do so much more in this context, and let's take, you haven't raised it, but let's take development and zoning, right? This is an area in which we've essentially had the right goals behind ULURP, right? Which was to have community engagement at the same time that you could get through a decision-making process, except it hasn't worked. We failed on both of those goals. And that means we have to actually look at, one, having conversations and pulling folks together from all sides to think about comprehensive planning, right? We have to start looking long-term and down the road and getting much more on the same page about the opportunities and what helps us grow, but grow fairly, grow equitably, grow in ways that serves us all well, and recognize that we're also going to have projects that are ongoing in the meantime, right? That they're parallel tracks. But that does mean pulling folks to the table, private sector, community, but effectively. I'd be the mayor that was doing it on day one and participating in day one, because so much of the time it explodes. Either the city hasn't been participating, hasn't been leading, hasn't used the opportunity of both creating, setting that table, inviting people to it, and using it as the opportunity to be very clear about the principles. What should we be getting out of a project or out of planning and growth? And how do we ensure that there's sufficient transparency about whether we'll get that? Take Bushwick, the Bushwick rezoning is a great example where community came together and had an upzoning plan, had a plan for growth. And then what we saw on the city side is coming up with a different plan and the community getting angry because those two conversations weren't happening. That wouldn't happen in a Maya Wiley administration because those conversations would be happening, but they'd happen with all sides. And I would make decisions, but they would be principled. They'd be clear, transparent all the way through about the principles, the data, and the data points that demonstrate and support the decisions that the city would make.
So it sounds like under a Maya Wiley mayor, rezonings would continue and maybe even grow or expand, but done in a different process.
Yeah, and also working through changes we need to make it better in the process. I think part of what we'll be doing and partnering on is how do we improve the process, right? So that those original two goals actually get met. But while we're doing that, we still have to keep it moving, right? But we'll keep it moving well. And we'll keep it moving better and in more relationship. And it's a big part of the power of city government that hasn't always been exercised, right? Is that ability to be a convener, to be laying out and being transparent about principles and about the data and the decision making that demonstrates whether it's being accountable to those principles or not, because that's what we need.
And oftentimes it's when people actually talk and have a conversation and you listen, and then you can do some great things with it.
Yeah, and right now, one thing I will say that I find so not surprising, I'm not surprised by it in any way, but so encouraged and excited. There's so much more agreement in this city than we'd ever know from what we read in the press.
I agree.
It is not blaming the press. I mean, I understand the news stories, but it only captures a snapshot rather than the underlying current. People are really, really wanting to be pulled together.
They do. They want to work together.
They want to work together. And that's one of the best things about New Yorkers, right? When times get tough, New Yorkers get tougher.
Right.
But we also come together as we get tougher. And that's the opportunity here. And government can lead that opportunity.
And it should. And it's a great opportunity to lead. I want to go back to your capital plan, because I know that's been something you've been very proud of and talked about. But let's start with transportation and infrastructure, because a lot of the most important things about building New York are not skyscrapers or bridges or parks. It's things that most people never see. And I remember talking with many of your former colleagues at City Hall a year ago, when they were reaching out to people in different organizations. And I remember my message was, if you're going to stop construction, be very careful that you're not stopping important infrastructure work. Because the last thing you need to happen is a water main break, a Con Edison break, a sewer pipeline break, because it's an old city. So,
And we've seen those,
and
right?
we've seen them, and we know it. And, with ambulances running around First and Second Avenue, you don't need a water main break. So infrastructure to me is sexy. It's not always sexy to people out there, but tell us your vision on transportation and infrastructure, and then we'll talk a little bit about how you want to kind of reshape the capital budget process.
Yeah. So first, let me say, I used to have a T-shirt that said "Infrastructure is sexy."
I love it.
Well, because, if you actually, and I say this as a racial justice advocate, when you look at inequities and why we have communities of color that are so poor and disconnected, and why 750,000 New Yorkers travel over 90 minutes to get to work, and a big chunk of those earn $35,000 or less, right? So when you look at those inequities, those unfairnesses, they're structural, and so much of it has to do with infrastructure decisions we've made. I'm same with universal broadband, which was an area of mine as an advocate, and also inside City Hall, and getting every apartment in Queensbridge houses free broadband. But it's thinking about, how government can deliver 21st and 22nd century infrastructure is critical to all the things we want to produce for people. So this question is, I think, very central to being transformative and reimagining the city so it's working for all of us. And I'm someone who comes from a background that includes, in addition to broadband, transportation equity and investing in public transit. So one thing I would say is, absolutely, in our capital construction plan, we are going to create metrics, and we're going to talk to everyone about putting input into those metrics so that we're identifying the smart infrastructure projects. Because as we know, capital construction is both building stuff we need, but it's also fixing stuff we need fixed. And our opportunity to be stimulative in our economy and also fix underlying problems and make us stronger is to identify those best projects. So a big part of it is to fast track, pull forward and fast track those kinds of projects and cut through the red tape. And that's why I'd have a New Deal czar to help do that, someone who direct reports to me as mayor, because I saw firsthand how much of a difference it made to be that direct report to a mayor as the person who gets the agencies together and cutting through that red tape. But the other part of it is, we do need an infrastructure bill out of DC. And one of the things that I both did inside City Hall and before City Hall is working across the country with broadband access. We pulled cities together and we're marshaling our collective power to ask for more from Washington around broadband access. We can do the same thing on transportation. We have to do it for our subways, but we also, so we're doing two things, right? We're looking for our opportunity because there is going to be an infrastructure bill of some kind. So our ability to work and leverage relationships with other cities, given the strength of our delegation. Hello. I mean, I think we got some real power inside DC.
Right.
We got lots of power, and we got to recognize that's a huge opportunity, but it's also the power of leveraging the other relationships that we have as cities to go in together with the right kind of collective demands that maximizes that. I mean, we're also seeing that with Nydia Velázquez. I'm proud to have Nydia Velázquez's endorsement, but she's actually moved and has, for our metropolitan region, a chunk of the senators co-sponsoring on bringing $32 billion to the city for NYCHA. I mean, so the opportunities are very real. Transportation and public transit in particular has to be a huge part of that, in addition to these infrastructure repairs from our pipes to our bridges and roads. And we do need to do that. So some of it we'll do with our budget. And of course, we're going to work collaboratively to leverage what we can from Washington as well.
I have a simple rule with Nydia Velázquez, who I've known a long time. When Nydia calls, you just say, yes, Nydia. That's it. It's very simple. And things will happen from there. But people don't realize Nydia has been doing all of this for the last 2 decades.
2 decades.
It's now
She's been delivering with Republicans in office.
She has always delivered for her district, and I live right outside of her district, but have worked closely with her for the last at least 15 years, and she is a true fighter and incredible at what she does. I can't say enough about Nydia. And maybe we'll actually do something with the BQE, because it's a big part of Nydia's district that goes through Brooklyn and Queens. And I think the mayor clearly has an opportunity to shape the legacy of a Robert Moses relic that has destroyed communities along the corridor, and really help build a grand infrastructure plan that includes waterfront access and green technology and green building and everything that goes with that.
Everything that goes with that. And that's part of the reimagining opportunity we have. And the crisis, look, none of us wanted this crisis, and all of us wish we never had it. That's putting it lightly. At the same time, just like President Barack Obama used to say, don't let a good crisis go to waste, because the opportunity it gives us to not just recover from the crisis, but to fix these problems that were problems before the crisis, that the crisis actually laid more bare and created much more consciousness around everything from healthcare. Healthcare and schools are infrastructure too.
Absolutely.
Broadband is infrastructure. And we had these problems beforehand, but now everyone sees the tremendously devastating impacts and how it keeps us, in terms of our social infrastructure, from being able to be resilient in the face of what are going to be growing challenges. And we got to get better at them and know that this is a pandemic. We might have another one. So we need to have all these things fixed so that if we have another one, hopefully not for a very long time, we will be prepared, and we will not have the crisis that we had this go round.
Exactly. So, when you talk about schools, obviously one of the largest pieces of the capital construction budget in New York City is school construction.
That's right.
But we've made an argument that it's more than just building buildings and rebuilding buildings, but we learned that particularly in the poorest communities in the 5 boroughs, when the children couldn't go to school, they couldn't access school from their homes. Right. Not everyone has the broadband, the laptop, the iPad, the iPhone. And I think, as the next mayor comes in and looks at school construction, there has to be a plan and a strategy of the design, the future of what the school looks like, which is a community resource and not just a building.
Absolutely. And, as the candidate who actually faced and head on this problem inside City Hall, and actually created a plan that got partially executed. I left. The rest of the plan did not. I put $70 million, won my argument, which was not hard to win because, of course, it was really important to the mayor, but of getting $70 million into the capital construction budget for broadband. We'd never had a line for broadband in the capital construction budget. And this is part of understanding, you can't create the lifeblood of the city unless you know where you have to create some arteries to pump that blood. And the capital construction budget is part of that. But to your point, it's also recognizing our assets. So our schools and our libraries are tremendous assets for broadband access. If we can partner, and this was part of what we were trying to do with the federal government before the Donald Trump administration that didn't want to hear it, was ways that they could change the rules of the game so that we could leverage that broadband and penetrate more community with that broadband. I know New York Public Library is working on this right now, as is Brooklyn Public Library. But our schools generate a signal and they pay for it 24/7, but they don't use it 24/7. And so there's so many opportunities for us to reimagine, but it's 1.8 million New Yorkers who either don't have broadband at home or don't have a device or sufficient devices to get on. And so that was before COVID, and everything from our children in schools and learning. And also, as we know, this is not just about surviving a pandemic. It's about being competitive in an economy that's technology driven.
Absolutely.
So it's actually fundamental to education, and we got to support our teachers to be able to deliver that education. And to your point about buildings, it's also using this crisis to recognize we can think about schools differently. We can use vacancy differently. We have 618 schools in the city that are grossly overcrowded. That's not just overcrowded, because there are more. If we just say overcrowded, that's grossly overcrowded. And that does impact learning. And we can start to use this crisis to think very differently about how we do school, as we're building out and thinking differently about space, but also about access.
Agreed. One of the questions we got from one of our colleagues at the university level is, how do you envision the not-for-profit sector that has been very significantly impacted by the pandemic? Hospitals, universities, Broadway, cultural institutions. How do you see them working with Mayor Wiley and moving forward as we rebuild the city?
Yeah, look, as someone who's been in higher education, right, at the new school, as a senior vice president, and also as a faculty member, and as just a resident of the city that knows how much arts and culture is just core to our well-being, as well to our economy. But same with higher education, same with our hospitals, our safety net hospitals. I was just at St. Barnabas, which was in Queens, which was the first COVID, I diagnosed COVID patient. And we were just having a conversation last week about how to fight from keeping it from closing, despite the fact that there aren't sufficient number of hospital beds in Queens. It actually had the highest count of COVID and the lowest number of hospital beds per capita. That doesn't make sense. But a big part of it is thinking about how we can collaborate. So first of all, in terms of arts and culture, yes, vaccines, yes, the city and the mayor which is the mayor, I'll be a huge booster for arts and culture, both in terms of our infusion of resources, but also making sure folks are getting back to those institutions, spending their dollars there, getting people back. We have an arts and culture component to our New Deal New York capital construction plan, including hiring creatives as part of those processes and creating more arts and culture space with that money.
Very critical.
It's very critical. But when you think about, let's just take healthcare costs, because what our safety net hospitals share as a problem with our higher educational institutions and nonprofits is the cost of healthcare, because the greatest fixed cost for our not-for-profits is personnel, and the greatest fixed cost there is the rise in healthcare costs. Tuition goes up because healthcare costs go up. The same thing is true in our safety net hospitals are serving people who are uninsured and not getting paid for the service. It's one of the reasons. It's not that they're not needed. It's that the folks they're treating don't have any way to pay for it. So a couple of things is we can use our bargaining power and collectivize our bargaining power, because the city has 1.25 million people it's insuring. It's a lot of bargaining power. But when you add higher education, and you add our unions who are also negotiating, there's a way for us to both make costs transparent and negotiate it down. But we can also create, and that's a big deal for all those institutions, government and not-for-profit. But there's also a different way for us to think about how we're covering the uninsurance rates, because it's not the only thing I will do as mayor, but because there's disproportionate share funding from the state we got to work on, lots of different issues. But a big part of it is thinking about the power we have as a city to create insurance options for people who don't currently have it, because that also ensures that there's more resources flowing into our safety net hospitals to help preserve and save them. So they're all different. Those are three different things we can do just as a city without new resources, right. Just thinking about how we're partnering and using the power that we have to do more for our people, including our not-for-profit sector, including for our employees, and including for folks who are uninsured.
Right. You mentioned the word that I'm a fan of, which is being a booster for New York. Now, I served as chief of staff, as everybody knows, to Marty Markowitz for many years.
One of the greatest booster, forget about it.
Exactly. And I learned in my time with Marty that being a cheerleader and a booster are not bad words. Because if the leader of whatever, I lead an organization, Marty led a borough, you will lead whatever you're doing, if you're not boosting and energetic and excited, I don't think the people around you will be either. So tell us about Mayor Maya Wiley as a booster for New York.
We big, we bold,
I
and
love
we
it.
back.
Good.
Because and I say that, look, I have known, my brother and I were babies in the city on the Lower East Side in a Mitchell-Lam apartment. We moved to DC, but both of us knew our whole childhoods we were coming back to New York. There was never a question. He came back, I came back, we stayed raising kids in this city, going nowhere. But this is the thing. If there is no better or greater or more fabulous and miraculous city than New York City, even in this crisis, and I would argue especially in a crisis, because what we saw, we had shuttered restaurants that couldn't earn a dime, struggling to figure out how it was going to get resources from the city and the federal government, and they were delivering meals to hungry people. We have a city in which folks were volunteering as food pantry lines were jumping 250%. And despite the pandemic, but I saw so many New Yorkers getting out there, mutual aid, figuring out how to find people who are elderly and see if they needed shopping because they were shuttered in. This is who we are. And I will tell you, New Yorkers don't go down without a fight, and we win when we fight. And so for me, and I got two kids who are going nowhere either, don't want to go anywhere else. One didn't even want to leave the city for college. She's like, I'm not leaving New York. This is who we are. And this is why I'm running, because I never thought I would be a politician, but damn, this city is not going down on my watch or anybody else's. And if you don't love this city, you're not a New Yorker.
I'm with you.
I love the city.
We are a unique breed of people, that is for sure. So a great city, an open city, a prosperous city, none of that happens unless it's a safe city, a clean city,
Absolutely.
Other than beautiful graffiti, but not ruining people's properties. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
I'm getting a lot of messages. Maya Wiley, tell us your vision for a safe New York and a clean New York.
Well, first of all,
I feel like they both go together, right?
Oh, of course they do. Of course they do. Look, because it's a public health hazard not to have the trash picked up.
Especially now.
We never should have had a budget conversation last June that was cutting $100 million from the sanitation budget. There was no reason for that. We spend like $90 billion, but we can't find $100 million to get the trash picked up. Of course we can. That's just, not making the right decisions about where to cut and what to not cut, right? Which we have to do. We have to have a moral budget because a moral budget's a smart budget because it means we're picking the right things to invest in, and trash collection obviously is central. And there's no community in the city, not Northern Manhattan, not Southeast Queens, not Midtown. There's just simply no community in the city that doesn't have this as a high priority, which makes it the right priority for city government. It just happens. The second, though, is we have to look. If you think about the two primary safety issues that are top of mind for New Yorkers that are also being reported for reasons that are completely responsible, should be reported, that are also the things we can change, that are making people feel insecure and unsafe and are impacting both our psychology and our trauma, but also our sense of confidence in coming back. That's homelessness and gun violence. So mental illness, because street homelessness, about 4,000 people any given night. Mentally ill, need substance addiction treatment or both. Those are folks who, by and large, it's a humanitarian crisis, but also means folks with mental illness who are untreated can sometimes become dangerous. And that's what people are feeling. But here's the thing. If we, instead of spending $3 billion a year in trying to convince people who are homeless to go someplace they do not feel safe in congregate shelters, and they do not feel like they're getting the appropriate services, we don't solve the problem and we spend a lot of money. But if we shift how we think about it and recognize that we could have a housing first strategy, where instead of trying to put people in expensive congregate shelter, we're moving them to permanent housing and spending our social service dollars on site supportive services. That works. We know it works. We have a vacancy crisis and a real opportunity to speed that up dramatically. Shift our subsidy structures also so that we are, because right now, if you're a homeless adult, you're getting a $1,200 voucher to find an apartment. You can't get a studio apartment for $1,200 in this anywhere in this city.
Nowhere.
And so but if we up the subsidy for that, we're actually spending less on shelter, and folks are in homes. And so
and you're also helping the landlord, because the landlord knows they're going to get paid rent, so that he can pay their mortgage every month.
Correct. So if we think about it in this different way of how we're utilizing and we're just talking about existing resources right now. We're talking about money we're spending right now, but we shift how we spend it, and also talking about not-for-profit partnerships. The folks who are expert at speaking to people who are mentally ill or substance addicted who are on the streets in terms of getting them into that housing, they're extremely effective, and we have to resource them to be our outreach. Doesn't make sense to ask police officers to be that outreach. It's not what they do. It doesn't solve the problem. It actually can sometimes create problems. It's not fair to the police officers. So we get the right people also doing that, and we can radically reduce street homelessness, radically reduce it, and use the vacancy that we have now and the opportunity we have now to radically rethink how we're spending our dollars so that we're spending them more wisely. And actually, in the long run, that brings the costs down to the city, and it does it in a way that's protecting people's humanity at the same time that it's making us safer. So that's a very different approach. And on gun violence, look, I'm just going to say it. It's in so many of our communities, it's harder to get a job than a gun. And all the research is clear, and I'll put my wonk hat on right now, but the research is clear. When jobs go up, gun violence goes down. When jobs go down, gun violence goes up. It's not complicated.
It's pretty simple.
It's pretty simple. So our plan is and the first platform I put out, because of the safety issue in this crisis, is gun violence prevention plan. So we would put $18 million. Well, let's start with, we're going to double the number of summer youth employment in communities that have high rates of gun violence, right? Because the last thing you do, and summer's always the worst months, is not create those job opportunities. We're going to more smartly align our workforce development dollars so that we're ensuring that there's investment in helping folks get jobs in those communities that have high unemployment. And for youth from 18 to 24, we're talking about more like 50% unemployment. We're not talking about the 16%, which is awful. We're talking significantly higher, so that we're really creating that plan, just like we were talking about in terms of the pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs that the building trades has. Those are real opportunities, Absolutely. But they're just some of the opportunities. We also have to have trauma-informed care in our schools. We'll put money into that because gun violence is also a trauma problem. Violence can beget violence, but aligning, and putting resources into community for violence interruption before it starts is also part of it. But all of that is to say, we have literally 4 separate planks to pulling down gun violence in a way that also strengthens community and reduces the burden on police. So what they can focus on and should be focused on is how illegal guns are coming into the city and into our neighborhoods in the first place. That's what we want them focused on. So we solve the other problems and pull those rates down so that they can also focus on the gun trafficking. So those are the ways I'd approach homelessness and gun violence, because really when we're talking about the insecurity and the fear that we feel, those are really the 2 primary reasons, and we can start solving them right away.
I agree. And obviously when it comes to summer jobs, I think that the next mayor really needs to use the business community and all of us out there because our members are the ones creating jobs. There must be a real pipeline of job creation.
Even thinking about, because this is also the models of schooling that you raised earlier, Carlo, right? If we're like, take P-Tech, where IBM is partnering with a high school. These are kids getting 6 years of high school because they're getting an associate's degree at the end.
Absolutely.
Not just a high school degree.
Things we want.
Yeah,
and
and these are the
do
things
it in construction and design,
life
engineering,
sciences.
life sciences, STEAM and
Exactly.
STEM and everything.
And partnering on where the growth is happening. I mean, tech added jobs during COVID,
Yeah.
and people moved into the city for those jobs. Life sciences, right? Healthcare. Like we have these growth areas in the city. And so, one of the great things that Bloomberg did was Cornell Technion. We need to think about the other opportunities of what we create in the city that continues to anchor those growth institutions, right? And the growth sectors, but then create those partnerships and pipelines that are both how we're doing education, but also then where, exactly as you said, the internship models and the ladder models, because with the partnership, we can do that. And that's exciting to me.
And, if you look at, the talk of the real estate leases being down, et cetera, but some of the largest leases in the last several years happened during the COVID year. And they were Google and Facebook and Amazon and all these places that are creating tech jobs. It'd be great that a kid in Brooklyn, Queens, or Staten Island, or the Bronx in 5 years is getting that job, and not somebody, with all due respect to my friends out west, coming from California to get those jobs.
Well, and as I was talking to another tech entrepreneur, and rightly saying, it's also tech jobs are in non-tech. So it's both. You're absolutely right, Carlo, and it's a both and, because there are also a lot of opportunities for what those jobs are inside of businesses that are not tech businesses.
Right.
It's huge opportunity, huge opportunity. And when we solve the digital divide and invest in teachers to be able to deliver, and because we have to do that and support our schools to do that, and have the partnerships with the private sector and the pathways opened up, and using and seeing CUNY as a tremendous resource for this, and really bolstering, ensuring we're saving and supporting CUNY. There's so many assets we have in the city, and our assets are everything from our institutions to our people. And we just have to pull all that together, and then we become stronger and more fair and more just.
Well, I think that is a great place to at least pause the conversation until the next one. Not stop it. But, before we go, tell us some things that you found great about the COVID time, the quarantine.
Yeah.
I tell people I refound a love of cooking, although John Paul Lupo and I have a little argument about whose sauce is better. But
I have had John Paul.
But you're gonna have to try mine now. I don't know.
I was just gonna say.
I will. I think John Paul and I, after the election, let's get you through June. We will do a summer taste testing on whose sauce is better.
I'm down for that.
All right.
I will be an impartial judge.
You should be.
But I'll also be a transparent one and say you got a mountain to climb there, Carlo.
I know, I agree. I get it. But I'm ready. But tell us what you found exciting about.
So, a couple of things. So one, it was so wonderful having a kid in college and a kid in high school. And so starting that empty nest process, I really enjoyed having family dinner with the entire family every night. That was a gift. It was a gift. I'd rather not have COVID, but it was a gift. And it helped me get through COVID. And the other is just community. The summer, when we were all pouring out into the streets, the parks were full. I don't live far from Prospect Park, and everybody was in the park. And it's a reminder of all that we have in New York and what our diversity is. Because it was one day I was walking through the gateway where I enter the park, and there was on one side was clearly a whole extended community that was Puerto Rican, and on the other side was Bangladeshi. And, it was like, and everybody had their music playing and their food cooking on the, but even in the restaurant scenes with everything pouring out onto the sidewalks, it just became a very important recognition that physical space and its openness and its spilling out into it also creates community.
Yep.
And it was a place where we could find neighbors and see each other and just be together and not feel stressed about it in the sense of public safety, right? And health, but be able to find each other again. And also the lessons about how rich that makes our city, that if all our communities, and it was from Mott Haven to Jamaica, to Cortelyou Road corridor in central Brooklyn, like all these places that had that vibrancy. And what it showed us about the opportunity to have more of that, right? Because it shouldn't take COVID to have created that. And that's something I think we can have more of. But the last thing I said earlier, which is just the spirit of New Yorkers, the committed, absolute committed nature of New Yorkers to help each other in a crisis was just amazing.
It's a beautiful thing. Well, Maya Wiley, we wish you all the best. This was a great conversation. We're excited to hear more about your plans as you continue to unveil them in the coming weeks.
Yeah. Well, we look forward. We've got small business rolling next, so
Awesome.
Be looking for that. But I'm looking forward to it, Carlo. I'm looking forward to doing it in Midtown with some espresso for real.
Well, I say this, when we have our real espresso, you're going to come to Bay Ridge and we'll spend some time.
Okay. Well, that's not far.
Not far. And it's funny you mentioned the summer. I live in Bay Ridge and I have a 5-year-old, as I mentioned, and we spent a lot of time going out to dinner over the summer. And we cooked, we went out, but the vibrancy of seeing the 3rd Avenue and 5th Avenue restaurant scenes was amazing. And I know the restaurant owners went through so much, but the summer was a good place for everyone to be out.
Yeah. And shows how much we need our small businesses.
Need our small businesses.
They are the heart of our communities.
They are. Well, have a wonderful day, Maya. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Carlo.
Everybody watching, this has been a really great time, and we'll be announcing our next Espresso with Carlo guest shortly. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Be safe and well.
Yes, you too. Thank you.